Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm making all 18 snails from the Life series. Now if you've never watched the Life series before, it's basically a Minecraft series where a bunch of creators are thrown onto a server together to build, team up, betray each other and battle to be the last person standing. And in episode 3 of Wildlife, every single player had their own personalised snail relentlessly chasing them around the server. For some reason, I looked at all 18 of those snails and thought, yeah, that'll be a quick, easy project. I was very wrong. We'll start off with Grian's snail, Gary. I'm going to show the full making process of Gary, but for the other snails, I'll mostly focus on the customizations so we're not here for the next 7 years. I've actually made a Gary before. I made one as a birthday present for a friend, so technically, this isn't my first snail rodeo. I have absolutely no idea what happened to the camera during this clip. For some reason it just decided focusing was optional. Next up we have zombie Cleo snail, Snail Cleo. I wanted to engrave the iconic stripes onto the shell first, because I knew trying to paint them on freehand later would be an absolute nightmare. And somehow this actually worked first try. Then I made a bunch of tiny flowers, which also conveniently helped cover up a bit of tinfoil that had started poking through the clay. After glazing, I painted some faux fur ginger along with most of my hands in the process and hot glued it to the head. Then we have B00100 snail, Bdubs snail. This one was a lot of fun to make. I carved out the big smile along with Bdubs' iconic bandana wrapped around the head. After a few layers of red on the bandana, I started painting the mouth. And of course, I had to add the highlights in the eyes. That's one of the tiny details that suddenly makes it feel alive. I always love using this faux fur for the hair because before trimming, it always looks like some kind of tiny rock star. Next we have Good Times with Scars snail, Escargot. I started by adding Scar's iconic smile, then moved on to sculpting the whimsical hat, which honestly might be one of my favourite accessories out of all the snails. I also decided to use two different glazes on this one. I used a satin glaze on the actual snail and a matte glaze on the hat so that it would stand out a bit more. I genuinely feel like a snail hairdresser throughout this project, because after painting the hair, I blow dry it, then brush it out with a clay tool to stop it from getting crunchy. After finishing escargot, I suddenly had the bright idea of making Scar's cat jelly, as she appears in so many of Scar's builds. This is probably the smallest clay sculpture I've ever made, so the whole thing was unbelievably fiddly. After painting her, I used a bit of PVA glue to stick her to the shell, then glazed everything together. I did also realise halfway through painting the glaze that I forgot to paint her collar, so that got panic painted at the last second. Now we have Etho's lab snail, Etho's tripod. I started by cutting out little triangles for his mask, then used the leftover clay to make the headband. Honestly, this one was surprisingly simple to paint compared to some of the others. Most colours need layer after layer after layer before they actually look solid, but with black paint, one layer, done, beautiful. After glazing, I added the hair, and for once I didn't even have to paint it first, which honestly felt like a luxury at this point. Now we have BigB's snail, BigB's shell. If you're wondering why there's not really a clay building stage, it's because most of the details on this one comes from the painting. So this was very much a base first, then slowly bring everything to life with layers of paint. Next up we have SmallishBeans Snail, SmallishBeans. I used the pattern on my clay tool to press texture onto the coat, which worked really nicely for adding details. This part is kind of a dry brush technique, which is more of a subtle way to build up gradients and bring out detail on the surface. And we just had to use the gold paint at some point, it's been too long. Like a lot of these snails, I also managed to forget something before glazing. So here I am, painting the eyes after I'd already glazed. The green stripe in the hair also took a few tries. The first attempt just kind of merged into the brown into some muddy colour. So on this one, I painted the green separately and glued them all together instead. Now we have Mumbo Jumbo Snail, Schnumbo. I cut the little tie and shirt colour, then shaped 2 raindrops to create a little moustache. I don't know what it is about a snail with a moustache and a tie, but it's just so cute. Off camera, I actually spent around 20 minutes trimming and styling the hair so it would be slicked back, and it was totally worth it. Next we have Rendog Snail, Ren the Snail. I did go a bit off the original design for this one, but Rendog often plays a kind of king or lord, so I felt there just had to be a tiny crown somewhere. Next we have TangoTek Snail. Tangastrapod. Like Rendog Snail, I did change the design a bit. I was inspired by a version of Tango Snail I saw online. I also found this giant brush that works surprisingly well for the hair. Next we have Solidarity Gaming Snail, Solidarity Gaming. I started by sculpting a tiny clay coat, armless of course. The coat was painted a soft baby blue, which already gave it a really nice base look. From there I moved onto the shell, switching things up a bit to a bright blue instead of a more natural brown. A few layers later the eyes went in, which is always the point where it starts to feel a bit more alive. Next we have Dang That's a Long Name Snail, Smajor 1995. I went straight into painting with this one with a light blue base, which was really satisfying to apply. Then came the rainbow on the shell, which was definitely one of the more nerve-wracking parts of the whole build, but also really fun to see come together. I ended up adding 2 tiny blue stripes on each side of the rainbow, since I ran out of space to do one full stripe on its own. I also painted tiny drip effects on the edge of each stripe to tie it all together. And for some reason I used PVA glue instead of hot glue here. I don't fully remember why, but it worked either way. Next up we have Impulse's Snail, Snail. For this one I started by painting a patch of yellow, then went over it with black paint, leaving the shape of the eye unpainted so that it would show through. It was a simple idea, but really satisfying once it came together. After glazing, I added faux fur for the hair, then trimmed it down the shape. Next we have MC Skizzleman Snailman. The waistcoat gave me a bit of trouble at first, as it just wasn't sitting quite right. But once I added the shirt collar and little tie, everything suddenly started making sense as a design. Looking back, I wish I made the tie a bit bigger, but overall it came together pretty nicely. Now we have GeminiTay Snail, Gemini Snail. I have to say, the colour on this shell might actually be my new favourite colour. It's just so bright, sunny and happy. It really reminds me of mango sorbet. Doing the long hair on these snails is always a bit nerve-wracking though, because it can either look amazing or completely fall apart. Luckily, this one ended up on the good side of that. Next we have Pearl-Scent Moon Snail, Pearl-Scent Snail. I decided to do something similar to what I did with Scar's Snail and Jelly, but this time I did Pearl's Wolf Tilly from Double Life Season 3. Next we have Inthelittlewood Snail, in the little shell. When I first started painting the brown on the side of the shell, I had that initial moment of, oh gosh, what have I done? It looked a bit rough at first, and I wasn't fully convinced it was going to work. But after a few more layers of paint, it slowly started to come together and actually looked a lot better than I expected. Last but by no means least, we have LDshadowlady's snail. LD Snail Lady. For this one, I added some butterfly details, inspired by season 2, when she built a base called the Fairy Fort. And to everyone who's still here, genuinely thank you so much for watching this very long video. And now let's take a look at the final result of all the snails.